Thank you for joining me on today's 820 episode. I hope you will enjoy the ride. Hopefully you'll enjoy the journey. And hopefully you'll take something from this conversation unto your personal and through your personal challenges, trials, successes, maybe hiccups, but always on the road moving forward. As a child and as a man. As a child and as a man. Remember this, or simply to observe this now if you can. Yet another question for you to ponder for a moment. Do you remember when you were a child? Or like when you were a baby? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But can you remember when you could not find the words to speak? Do you remember that kind of frustration as a baby, 3, maybe to 8 months years old? Or 8 months old, put it that way, not 8 months years, 8 months old. When you were able to perceive things, people's sounds, noises, smells, and touches. And back then, you wanted to say something. You would try to say something. And the things and the people and the sounds that were spoken to you or around you and what you're trying to respond with, they weren't really responding to what you were trying to say back then. Can you remember that? That time when you were as a baby trying to get those words out and maybe you weren't thinking. You're just responding to what you were receiving as a baby and trying to communicate. You were already observing, but now you're trying to communicate. That's tough to remember. I know I have a difficulty going back into those annals of history and information from back then about what I was thinking or observing back then and how frustrating it was to not be able to eloquently converse with the older children, older adults, parents, relatives. It's hard to remember that, isn't it? But probably you don't remember that because I'm asking you to recall decades ago, and in my case, 6 decades ago, felt like, I had something to say 23,568 months old to people. I think I was doing the math there on how many months I had since then, since birth. And maybe that frustration, even as a baby, trying to communicate something that was not intelligible, but I was trying to get it out. All those things as a baby, as a child, trying to take in, sift, wade through, pull out things that made sense to me. I'm sure there's a lot of it. But just imagine that possibility that if you're able to remember how you were back then and trying to take in all these data points, noises, people, conditions, hot, cold, all that stuff coming to you as a baby, and you're responding, but you couldn't do it in words. I'm sure you had it in feelings, but even those feelings weren't communicated to people around you. So I could not speak back then as a baby or in the language around me. In my case, obviously, it was English. But I could not get the things or people around me to respond to my insightful observations as a baby or as a child. Maybe you're not like me, but I can barely remember what I had for breakfast this morning, and definitely not lunch yesterday. Maybe I'm wired weird that way, but my recollection strategy, my recollection dexterity is fading. Or maybe, just maybe, I'm more focused and oriented and prioritizing the moment of presence in this moment called now. So I speak of this recollection, a remembrance as a man and as a child, because I cannot recall or can't remember what I was thinking back then, either several months or a couple years ago, before I was actually imitating and saying something of somewhat English intelligence as a child, trying to say that and to communicate that to family or friends or whoever was around me. I can't recall that kind of frustration and that I could not have a conversation with people around me as a baby. So I'm saying that term as a man and as a child. I couldn't do that from here looking backwards then, but I'm even having trouble with that moment now to recall frustration that I was not able to resolve. So I speak of it now as a man that was a child. As a man, is similar experience many decades after being that I had that experience as a child. That is similar to right now. So I'm not asking any of you to do that or to mimic me or to imitate me on my journey into and with resilience about this balance back and forth between being a man and a child at the same time, and maybe trying to be an adult or a growing entity as a child. And here I am now as a man, sometimes reverting into the frustration first experience as a child. So this discussion is probably dated a bit, but just like those over 6 decades ago experience about frustration that I guess I had, but I don't recall still what that frustration was back then. But about 20 years ago, when I had a stroke, and just for context, the stroke occurred in the left part of my brain. The left part of my brain is where news, where the words, where communication, where the formation of thoughts get enunciated or I guess generated. But as I understand it now, that's where the process of taking in inputs, formulating responsive words, that's where it happened. So for me, 20 years ago, that stroke pretty much eliminated that capability. So just quickly, back in 2005, for about somewhere between 6 to 9 months, I could not speak. I could not enunciate. I could not communicate anything intelligible. And that was as a child, but now as a man at that time of 42 years old, I felt just like a child, meaning I could hear things around me. Remember, I'm a full-grown man, essentially. But now I'm acting like a child. I mean, I could hear things around me, the people around me, the doctors in the hospital room, people visiting me in the hospital. I could not speak. Simply, I could not speak. I had in my head something to say, like, I'm hungry, I want chocolate milk, I need to go to work or back to work. None of that would come out. But I mention this to you today as a child and as a man, and as a man and as a child. I was unable to speak anything then. Now, I say I can say things similarly or kind of sort of well, but it wouldn't be the same way, or maybe it is the same way I was going to say something as a child. But now that inability to speak clearly lasted many months post-stroke. And then maybe almost a year and a half later, before I could actually start have some more intelligible, thought out and clearly formed words. I said similarly as an adult, but that was me at 42 years old. But then just like as a child, I still couldn't form a conscious thought or words of clear wisdom. And then for about 6 to 7 months after the stroke, I was unable to do that. But during that time post-stroke, I was slowly relearning or reconnecting some synapses and or brain cells if I had the ability or the time to be patient, slow down my pace, and let the world, not the world, let the God restore me to communicate. So I probably took a long time with that connection or trying to connect what I was as a man and as a child, as a man. That frustration didn't come from me, it came to me to relearn and to re-engage in the simplicity of this life. I keep coming back to this connectivity that we all have. Yeah, it's called resilience, but even before that, it's called the very breath, the very blood, the very heartbeat that we all share right now. They all come from the love that brought us here in the first place. I'm only asking you, as you either engage or re-engage your own resilience, just to remember that, please. Pay attention. Stay present. No matter where you are in this world, please remember, it's always